Good morning. Welcome to this meeting of the Environmental Protection Commission on September 15th. And we'll begin with a Pledge of Allegiance and an invocation led by Commissioner Stacy White.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll ask that everyone please stand at this time, and we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Attention, salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Heavenly Father, I pray that you will guide this board, our staff and stakeholders as we make important decisions this morning on maintaining a clean and healthy environment for Hillsborough County. As always, I pray for our first responders and members of our armed forces, and that you will guide them and keep them safe each and every day. I ask for these blessings in your heavenly name. Amen.
Amen. We have a few commissioners who are going to need to leave early today, so we're going to try to keep things moving and start off with a very quick roll call.
Good morning, Smith.
Here.
Cohen.
Here.
Hagan.
Here.
Kemp.
Here.
Myers.
Here.
Overman.
Here.
White.
Here.
Thank you. You have a quorum.
Thank you. And now we do have a couple of changes to the agenda. The approval of the minutes in our consent agenda has a little bit of changes, and I'll let staff describe that, and then we'll just include it in consent. And in the regular agenda, because of the time constraints we have today, we're going, and our guests here with us, we're going to move 9B up to ahead of 9A during the regular agenda. But Ms. Doherty or Mr. Marotti, do either one of you want to explain what's going on with the minutes we're approving in consent?
I'll let Mr. Marotti handle that.
Thank you, Commissioners. Good morning. Yeah, agenda item 7A is the minutes from August 18th, 2022. In the top of the agenda packet, page 7, which is the last page of the minutes, there's a bolded area, and this is a section of the meeting last month where the commissioners were interacting with Adam Gormley, a county employee. So there's some references to EPC board, 2 references to EPC board, and 1 reference to EPC staff that should be changed to BOCC board 2 times and county staff 1 time in that top bold area. Already consulted with the clerk. They don't have any concerns with the changes, and we can pull it up on a visual if you need to, but otherwise we just ask for a vote to change that section, and then whether it's now or at the consent agenda section to approve the rest of the minutes also.
Right. You can understand what's happening is because we're the Board of County Commissioners and the Board of the Environmental Protection Commission, there was a little bit of confusion about which board was doing which, but we're going to correct that in the minutes, and that will be, the corrected version will be included in the consent agenda. So need a motion to approve those changes.
Move changes.
Second.
Motion to approve Commissioner Kemp, second by Commissioner White. Please, let's take a roll call vote.
Smith.
Yes.
Cohen.
Yes.
Hagan.
Yeah.
Kemp.
Yes.
Myers.
Yes.
Overman.
Yes.
White.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
And Madam Chair,
Yes.
I had placed myself in the queue.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. I'm going to take myself out. I would like to be recognized just before we vote on the consent agenda.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And from here, we've got a proclamation. And this is, we only do a couple of proclamations at EPC, one for wetlands and this one for pollution prevention. And this pollution prevention proclamation will be presented by, well, some information about it will be presented by Mr. Javier.
Good morning, Commissioners. Good morning, Commissioners. Jerry Javier, EPC staff. I'll be doing a presentation this morning about pollution prevention, and if I could have that slide, that PowerPoint come up, please. And will I be able to see it from here?
You will.
Okay, so is the slide up, is the PowerPoint up yet? Okay. Perfect, thank you. So, good morning, Commissioners. The Pollution Prevention Act, and if I could go to the next slide, this is just the cover slide. The Pollution Prevention Act of 1990 was signed by President George H.W. Bush. The policy section of the Pollution Prevention Act provided a foundation for the adoption of pollution prevention as the top of the environmental management hierarchy. The policy section stated, Congress hereby declares it to be the national policy of the United States that pollution should be prevented or reduced at the source whenever feasible, and disposal or other release into the environment should be employed only as a last resort and should be conducted in an environmentally safe manner. The third week in September is celebrated annually by the U.S. EPA as Pollution Prevention Week, paying homage to the anniversary of the Pollution Prevention Act and established a national policy to prevent or reduce pollution. Next slide, please. Pollution prevention, or P2, means eliminating or reducing the amount and toxicity of potentially harmful substances at their sources prior to generation, treatment, or disposal. It emphasizes preventing or minimizing pollution rather than controlling it once it is generated. Pollution prevention protects the environment by conserving and protecting natural resources while strengthening economic growth through more efficient production in industry and less need for businesses, communities, and residents to handle waste. Implementing P2 can benefit both businesses and homeowners through increased efficiency and the use of fewer raw materials. For businesses, it can mean better process operations and less disposal costs. It also provides an opportunity for both businesses and residents to be better environmental stewards. Next slide, please. EPC staff would like to thank Chairman Commissioner Mariella Smith for sponsoring this proclamation. Commissioner Smith, the proclamation is yours.
Thank you. So we are acknowledging and supporting Pollution Prevention Week, which is celebrated annually on the third week of September, because preventing pollution before it is created is much better than trying to deal with it or dispose of it after the fact. EPC staff regularly identifies and recommends pollution prevention opportunities during their inspections of various facilities and during their reviews of various projects. So it's an integral part of Environmental Protection Commission staff's daily work. And I'm proud to say that this board of county commissioners, environmental protection commissioners, has been working together to prevent pollution runoff into our lakes, rivers, and bay with our new fertilizer ordinance and our new projects to modernize our sewage system. And those measures will keep tons of pollution out of Tampa Bay every year. It is much cheaper and easier to prevent tons of pollution from entering the bay in the first place than it is to clean up tons of dead fish after a red tide event, which is fueled by that pollution. And so with the reading of the 2022 proclamation, we promote and encourage the conservation and protection of our natural resources. And I'm just going to read the text of the proclamation from here. Is that going to show on screen while I read it? It just says, whereas the Environmental Protection Commission of Hillsborough County is promoting pollution prevention, there we go, and public awareness of our environment. And whereas the observance of Pollution Prevention Week is designed to focus the attention of local residents and businesses on the need to protect the environment by preventing pollution. And whereas the Environmental Protection Commission of Hillsborough County supports existing measures to control pollution while recognizing that preventing pollution is a progressive and effective strategy for maintaining a clean and healthy environment. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the Environmental Protection Commission of Hillsborough County, Florida, does hereby declare the week of September 19th to 25, 2022 as Pollution Prevention Week in Hillsborough County, and encourages all residents and businesses to support the Environmental Protection Commission in this worthy cause. And the proclamation you can see there on screen, and I've got a framed copy here to hand to our director, was executed this 15th day of September 2022 and signed by all 7 commissioners. Do you want to take a picture, Janet?
Sure, we can take
All right.
picture. Come up there.
Picture?
Head up there.
Okay.
Wasn't sure what we were doing here.
Okay. And now we'll move to our bittersweet recognition and farewell today. And I'll let Ms. Lorton kick it off.
Thank you, Commissioner, and it is bittersweet. Before I begin my remarks, I just want to say that, Reggie's fit a lifetime of being an air director in 1 year with FDOT, Gopher Resources, and the air incinerator curtain, and he and his staff have done a flawless job in navigating those turbulent waters, and I really want to thank him for that. And I do want to say he's joined with his wife today. I have spiritual rocks that are on my computer, and one day he was filling in for me as executive director when I was on vacation, and he and his wife gave me a book on Ruth, and I just want to thank you. That's just such a wonderful book, so thank you. But Commissioners, today we are here to honor Reginald Sanford, who is joined, obviously, by his lovely wife, Evelyn. You guys want to come on up? Reggie has over 35 years of public service, with 32 of those years spent with the Environmental Protection Commission of Hillsborough County. Reggie started at the agency under the leadership of our very first executive director, Roger Stewart, as an environmental specialist in 1991 in the citizen complaint response section, and that's where we get more complaints in that section than any other complaints in the agency, especially a lot of noise complaints. Reggie quickly distinguished himself as an outstanding young professional and co-worker over the years. He was promoted to supervisor and represented the agency on the Metropolitan Planning Organization, various technical committees, during a time when our region was struggling to meet ambient air quality standards for ozone. Reggie was also instrumental in the agency's resolution of the Ford Amphitheater noise enforcement case, which to date is the largest in EPC's history. Reggie is a thoughtful and dedicated leader, and it was during his leadership that Hillsborough County finally demonstrated compliance with all ambient air quality standards after more than 40 years of non-attainment. That's quite an accomplishment. Reggie is greatly respected by everyone who knows him, and he is considered a valued and loved member of our EPC staff. I am proud to say that Reggie has been an extraordinary ally in the agency's efforts to protect the environment and the citizens of Hillsborough County. He will be greatly missed, and I hope his retirement is as wonderful as his career has been. And I know you guys plan to travel, because Reggie was telling me yesterday at lunch, so I'm excited. I'd like to go to D.C. with you, too. I haven't been to D.C. in a while. So let me confer the Lifetime Achievement Award to Reggie. But before I do that, I'd like to bring up Sterling Woodard, who was his director for a long time. He is accompanied by his lovely wife, Laura Woodard, who also works in our water division. And for you, Commissioner Myers was the very first African-American engineer to graduate from University of Central Florida. So you want to stand up real quick, Laura? Come on up, Laura. You're family, too. We're all family. Come on up. So I'm going to turn it over to Sterling very quickly, and then we'll confer the Lifetime Achievement Award.
Good morning, Commissioners. Sterling Woodard. I'm not going to speak on any prepared remarks or anything like that because I started my career with Reggie about 32 years ago, and we were about 2 weeks apart. I'm a twin, so I know what it's like to walk the road with, someone else. But Reggie and I were kind of like Forrest and Bubba. We learned the ropes together, made the mistakes together, and it has been a true pleasure to have worked with him all these years because our careers have mirrored each other. His support for our agency and the staff has been wonderful. He's loved and respected by everyone who knows him. And I actually am glad to not say that he's just a colleague, but he's a friend. Regardless of whether we've done things over the years, me and all the staff, we worked on the 1990 ozone emissions inventory, whether it was calculating the emissions from all the air pollution sources in Hillsborough County, doing tedious work over and over, late nights and stuff, to whether it was the Ford Amphitheater where we were doing noise monitoring at 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning and being chased by alligators and stuff. And then to the point to where he succeeded me in the Air Division as the director of the division and helped bring the Gopher resource enforcement case in for a landing. If I could sum Reggie up in one word, it's tenacity. He has always been a tenacious and diligent person. And I know where he got it from. He was an all-state basketball player, and he actually was the captain of his basketball team at Eckerd College. Okay, a lot of people don't know that. But he would always pick out the biggest person on the court, because he played power forward and he's only 6'1". But he would pick out the biggest person on the court, the center, and he would challenge him and he would play him. So he was always up for a challenge. So I just want to say that we're going to miss him. I'm going to miss him terribly. You get to choose. You don't get to choose your family, but you get to choose your friends. And I didn't choose Reggie as a brother or anything. I think we chose each other. So I just want to let him know that we wish him the best. We wish him happiness. We know Evelyn is going to keep him fully busy. He's going to have honey-do lists and everything else. But the greatest compliment that I can give to him is that everyone who knows you loves you, and we will truly miss you, okay? And I love you. Love you too.
I concur with those remarks, and that is my alma mater too, Eckerd College. So he was a great basketball player there. His reputation is still going strong there, and he confers with a lot of people in the athletics department. We're going to confer the Lifetime Achievement Award, and then we'll let Mr. Sanford have some remarks and some commissioners as well. Here, Sterling, Laura, you guys want to hold this?
What did you pick for a photo?
The EPC bird. This bird was taken by Tom Ash years ago. So I will read what it says. It says, I got to kind of turn it. Sorry, Sterling, so I can kind of get to the microphone. In recognition of a lifetime of dedicated service and your 32-year commitment to protecting natural resources for the citizens of Hillsborough County, love and best wishes, your EPC family. This date, September 15th, 2022. You are welcome.
Thank you so much.
Come on up, Evelyn.
I actually had prepared statements, but for an event like this, I think it's probably best to go off the cuff. you can look at the people that work with me, Sterling, Laura, Janet, some of our other directors that are sprinkled around, and you know that I'm the one that benefited by working at EPC. I mean, truly, some of the money I made while working here, I probably owe it back to the agency because my time here was great. I mean, it's all about support. I thank the Lord Jesus Christ for allowing me to work at a place that I could be so happy and so satisfied. I mean, it is truly amazing. I was telling my wife, we were talking on the way in this morning, and it was like, man, some people, they have rough jobs and rough times, and it happens to all of us. But, for me and my work career, none of that has been consistent. The consistency is having a great job and a good time doing it. When I think it's a phrase that some of the students from the University of Florida used to say, we work hard and we play hard. Well, that's kind of how it is at EPC. We work really hard, but we have get-togethers at holiday events and luncheons, and we just kind of just really relax and enjoy ourselves and each other. My time with the agency, like Ms. Lorton has mentioned, was primarily to serve citizens when it came to noise and complaints. And because there was a need in another part of the agency, it allowed Ms. Lorton to make that decision to allow me to migrate up to the director position. It's not something that I sought out or really desired because I knew it entailed a whole lot of work. I worked up under Sterling for 4 or 5 years, Jerry Campbell before that, and it's a lot of work. But, with the support of Ms. Lorton, our senior staff that works really hard, we meet every Tuesday and we talk about everything and anything. And I can tell you that staff, they consider the needs of the public, this board, and also the staff that work for the EPC. So my 35 years in government service and 32 years here with EPC really is a time of Thanksgiving for me. It really is. I mean, it's been great. It's been wonderful. And I believe this board that we have seated right now is probably the best or one of the best boards that we had in my career. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. We are really losing some institutional knowledge and some great leadership lately in EPC, but certainly with your retirement, as it's interesting, as Janet, Ms. Lorton said, that you've had so many extra newsworthy challenges in your last year here, and you've handled them all with your characteristic skills. And there have been big wins in your tenure as well. And I was pleased and honored to be at the ceremony where we celebrated with state and federal officials the final attainment of meeting all our air quality goals for the first time in 40 years, reducing that sulfur dioxide emission in Tampa Bay, which was the last marker that we needed to get down to meet federal standards of air quality here. And that happened under your tenure. Through all of it, through the challenges and the successes and the day-to-day work that EPC does, your expertise, Reggie, and you have inspired confidence in the staff, in the board, and in the public. And you've inspired confidence and credibility in EPC, which is so important in our community. Your professionalism and leadership has lent that credibility, and your calm and cool leadership style leaves a history that others coming behind you will benefit from, and I'm sure learn from. But certainly your history with this agency is something that you and your family can be very proud of for the rest of your life. And we all wish you well as you go from here to the rest of your life, and hope that that is very happy. You certainly deserve it. So with that, I see Commissioner Myers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And good morning.
Good morning.
Reggie, thank you for your public servants, true public servants of Hillsborough County. I really appreciate your support during the Gopher Resources and going on WTMP to explain to the Tampa Bay community about the lead poisoning that was at that facility. It meant a lot to me and to the community as well to understand what EPC was doing and how the community would be informed. And you done that excellent.
Thank you, Commissioner.
You shared the knowledge of what was going on with EPC, what was going on with Gopher Resources, for a better understanding with the Tampa Bay community. Because so many people in the community were saying that those were minorities, how they're going to get assistance. And at the end, we found a way to find that facility for wrongdoing. And also thank you, Ms. Lawton, for your unwavering commitment regarding Gopher Resources. Sterling, we held our community event to inform the community when the story broke in District 3. Again, wishing you the best in your future endeavors. You might want to come back to Hillsborough County after you finish your 1 year. You know, we're always looking for people to come back, so phenomenal job. So we still can use your expertise, but enjoy your retirement. Thank you.
Commissioner. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Kemp, you're recognized.
Thank you. I was just thinking about why Ms. Lawton does wordles, because I just feel like you should have these big words that come up, you know, that describe the feelings. It's hard to, when I heard just you talking about the sounds and the alligators, getting the sounds at the Florida fairgrounds, or the, I'm not even thinking of the name of it right now. Amphitheater, yes, thank you. I remember back there, I was an aide in 2004, and there was the setups in the rooms with the speakers and Dr. Garrity, and it was, you know, and I didn't hear the story about the alligator threats to the staff there at the time. But the EPC is just has such a culture for so long, I think, of love, respect. Commissioner Smith used the word professionalism, and before she said it, I was writing it down just to remind myself of, you know, what I could say. It's a real gift to this community, and I think for you, it sounds like it's been not only protecting our corner of the earth here, but a joy as well for those who have touched the agency or worked with it, and that's such a gift. As you were speaking, I was thinking of a good friend who just told me last week, who's 69 years old, I want to retire. I've hated my job for at least a decade, you know? And you know, I just think about, you know, everything the EPC has brought to this community and what, just even experiencing a taste of that over at Thanksgiving, you can, you know, feel it. You can feel what the agency is, and Commissioner Smith always reminds us, and I think that's a great reminder of what it would be if we didn't have this, and what a difference it makes in our community that we have the EPC that is here to stand up and keep our backs when it comes to what is happening here with our water, our land. So thank you for your contribution over many years in that regards, and always are loved. It's hard to see the retirement of, even though it's another life and we wish you well, it's just hard to, the retirement after retirement, but I'm sure we're gonna have another culture. It's just been, it's been embedded there, I think, to keep going in a strong and wonderful way. So thank you for your service.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you very much. And yes.
Come on up, everybody.
Mr. Woodard, thank you so much for coming in today and being able to be a part of this. It's really, really great. All right, and we'll go from here to public comment. I see two people are signed up to speak, and they've asked to share their time. I'm going to say, this is always at the discretion of the chair, and I'm going to say I'm going to allow this time, this day, in the interest of time, to have the one speaker allowed the 6 minutes. But typically, this is not something that I would allow, and I just want to put that out there. I'm just allowing this one time. Later, if people want to share remarks, they can each take turns reading from the same speech or what other method they want to do. But for today, as long as Mr. Fernandez is on the line, Ms. Savitz can speak and take his time.
This is Rick Fernandez. I am here.
Okay, Ms. Savitz, you're recognized.
Yes, thank you. Good morning. Yesterday, during my public comment at TPO, I became a little heartfelt when mentioning my time in the Navy. I stumbled over my words a bit. Right after I started in the crash crew, I worked a helicopter crash. I saw burned and mangled bodies of 2 pilots. It is soul-crushing, even after 40 years. But it prompted me to take my job seriously and to do the best I can. I just want to point out that I am here trying to protect my community from pollution caused by the toxic dust that's created at the 275 expansion work. I think all tests need to be put on the table. FDOT said they've done a bunch of tests just last week at the board meeting. But I wonder if we're being gaslit. Let me explain. Back in May, a couple of media people took a look at this, the problem with the toxic dust pollution at 275. FDOT released a statement to them. Shannon Chloe of Channel 10 News, she recently did a report on the Lutz incinerator, and also Ben Montgomery of Axios, Tampa Bay. Both Chloe and Montgomery were given the exact written responses from FDOT when they followed up on my story. FDOT put in writing, here it is, and I quote, on May 11th, FDOT learned about concerns from the public regarding dust on the 275 project. The FDOT project team investigated the entire job and found no ongoing operations that were generating noticeable amounts of dust. While no testing has been done on our project, all concrete dust contains silica. OSHA has established standards for mitigating concrete dust at construction sites. And the statement goes on about OSHA standards, et cetera. While no testing has been done on our project, FDOT says that in writing. So who do I believe, FDOT or FDOT? They said they tested at the recent board meeting, yet FDOT put in writing that they didn't test. I don't know what to think. But I will say this, EPC, let's check these tests out. Let's confirm the labs. My airborne dust sample was analyzed by Advanced Environmental Labs in Tampa, received on May 5th, 2022. I still have a good amount left of the original specimen. It's not a soil sample. It does not have earth organics in it, soil, moss, minerals, fertilizers, bug bits, animal feces. It's not there. What is there is pulverized road materials containing extremely high levels of lead, off-the-chart levels of lead. And I have a video of this stuff flying in the air, cast off from jackhammering. I have 3 videos of that. And this toxic dust is still up there along 275. It has accumulated on the flat surfaces high up along the construction sites, on the support structures. The toxic dust is still there, and it can take flight again when wind and dry weather conditions exist. This is dangerous. It's 20 feet above. It's not in the soil. People can still be exposed to this. These sites need to be cleaned up now to protect the people who live nearby. And please, EPC, just analyze one of the dust piles on those overpass structures. Maybe the results will prompt someone to take their job seriously. Help us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Savitz. We appreciate your comments. Is there anybody else who wanted to speak at public comment today? Anybody in the audience? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. And before we move to the approval of the consent agenda, I'll recognize Commissioner White.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item E, I believe it is. I've lost my agenda here. I believe it's item E on the consent agenda, references a particular legal case. And I just wanted to state for the record that I've been working on an issue for years that involves a piece of property that fronts the Little Manatee River in Ruskin, that involves one of the same owners that's referenced in this case. EPC is well aware of it. They've done a great job in working the case through the years. Hillsborough County staff has been on this case as well, but since it involves one of the same owners and since some of the facts of the matter seem to be similar to the facts of the matter here, I just wanted to just shed some light on the case in Ruskin that I've been working on and just ask legal staff to consider that with respect to what's going on in Ruskin, and perhaps consider, if appropriate, bringing that into the mix here. It could be something in our arsenal.
And Mr. Marati, do you want to make any comments on that, or leave that as it is, since it's a legal matter?
We'll analyze whether it's appropriate to merge it with this one, but if we could just have, part of the motion would be, if appropriate, we could merge it, but I think at this point it's more in the code, on the code side, but it'll give us the opportunity to analyze it and see if it's worth combining the two.
And I just really wanted to just make some comments. I really don't even need anything incorporated into, unless you feel more comfortable. Okay. Well, how about if we do that? I'll move consent, and I'll add on there, if appropriate, to consider adding the Little Manatee River parcel case into the one referenced in item E.
That's perfect.
You're comfortable with that, Mr. Marati?
Definitely.
Great. We have a motion to approve by Commissioner White with that addition, and second by Commissioner Kemp. Seeing no further discussion, let's take a roll call vote.
Smith?
Yes.
Cohen?
Yes.
Hagan?
Yes.
Kemp?
Yes.
Myers?
Yes.
Overman?
Yes.
White?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
Okay, and moving right along to the regular agenda, as noted in the earlier section on the changes, we're going to take 9B first, and that is the update on air quality analysis with FDOT, and we'll have a presentation. Ms. Lorton, you want to kick it off?
Absolutely, Commissioner. We will be going to 9B, and Reggie Sanford will be speaking to this item. It's an update on the air quality analysis regarding the I-275 expansion.
Good morning, Mr. Sanford. We are pleased to see you in one last speaking role.
Good morning again, Commissioners. Reggie Sanford, staff. If they can please bring my presentation up. Okay, it takes a second. like Ms. Lorton alluded to, this is a follow-up to the presentation that we gave back in August. We committed to coming back to this board with our analysis of the reports that were provided to us concerning the widening, I-275 widening. We received those reports, and we have that analysis ready for you. In addition to those reports, the request came with a lot of concerns that were related to general air quality also. And so we've combined these two presentations into one. First, I'll briefly go through the general air quality information that we have. If we can go to the next slide, please. I tell you, it's really refreshing to hear the interest in local air quality, and we appreciate that as staff. As will be mentioned in Ms. Lorton's presentation, we have 11 air monitoring sites strategically placed across Hillsborough County. We measure all federally required pollutants such as ozone, nitrogen dioxide, and some of the others, listed there. We report hazardous emissions data to EPA on a regular basis in the event that someday they want to make rules that concern these hazardous pollutants. Our monitors are systematically placed. It's not a random thing. We coordinate with FDEP and also with US EPA on that coordination. If we can go to the next slide. One of the items that Commissioner Kemp brought up, she recalled that we have a monitor that's located near the roadside. And there was a discussion at the board level, so we didn't jump in and try to give you information on it at that time. But this slide is really a summary of what we have. When EPA looks at the standard for nitrogen dioxide, this is something that they do periodically. They determine that all areas of a certain size, certain population, must install a near road site. And what this is, it's a monitor that's located next to the interstate. And this segment of roadway is the highest traveled roadway in the Bay Area. So we established that monitor there. It's in compliance with all the EPA requirements. The thing I would say about this is that it constantly reads and collects data regarding nitrogen dioxide. But in addition to that, the small fine dust, carbon monoxide, and I'm pleased to report that we're in compliance for all of those standards. Next slide, please. Ozone is a persistent problem. It's something that every moderate to large municipality has to deal with. And because it's regional in nature, it can't solely be addressed by what takes place in Hillsborough County. It has to be addressed on a regional basis. So between EPA, EPC, and the DEP, there are a range of emission control activities that are in place. They cover things like restricting how much a permanent source can emit. It requires that small engines are made cleaner, such as like lawnmowers and leaf blowers. You wouldn't think they would have much effect on our air quality, but collectively they do. It also, at the EPA level, requires manufacturers to build vehicles better. So the vehicles that we drive today only pollute a fraction of what they used to, say, 20, 30 years ago. There are also some voluntary initiatives that we promote here locally. We promote telecommuting, people using public transit. We promote solar energy. We have a solar energy kickoff initiative every year. All of these initiatives combine, work together to keep our ozone levels down, and it allows us to meet the standards. So what you see in this chart above you is a 20-year data set that shows, even as the standard has been lowered over the years, this area has been able to comply with those more restrictive EPA standards. Next slide, please. So this leads me to the next slide that gets to another one of Commissioner Kemp's, and I think Commissioner Cohen's comments on Hillsborough County possibly having poor air quality. I want to point out there are many organizations and nonprofit groups that publish and promote their assessment of air quality. For the purpose of this presentation, we've chose to compare the standards that EPA has, the ones that we have to abide by, compare that to I guess, a methodology that was proposed by the American Lung Association. Using the Lung Association's grading methodology for ozone, they give this area an F, and they give the area an F probably at least for the past 10 years. Just about every year, they'll publish a report that says Hillsborough County has F air quality. And when EPA looks at us, we're meeting those standards, as was stated earlier by Mr. Woodard and you. We've attained the ozone standards. We're in fact in attainment for all of the federal pollutants. So in my opinion, it's somewhat deceiving when you have, private entities coming up with their own methodology to try to grade an area and say the air quality is bad. If you look at what happens at the federal level, what EPA does, they have a subcommittee that's formed by the National Academy of Sciences. They look at pollution levels, they measure it over time, and then they develop a standard. That's not done by ALA. Another thing I like to point out on this slide is that, sorry, I don't want to get ahead of myself. Another thing I want to point out on this slide, I can't see it for the words, but it's that if you look at the bottom green table, it notes the days that Hillsborough County was above the standard. So the days Hillsborough was above the standard was 4. The days Los Angeles County was above the standard is 114, yet we both got the same F grade. So it's pretty stark when you look at it in those terms. Next slide, please. Likewise, it's the same case with the fine particulate. We call it fine particulate, but it's essentially dust. We're meeting the federal standards for fine particulate. Next slide, please. If you look at a comparison, again, with what the American Lung Association grades us at, which is a B, versus the federal attainment that we've achieved, you see there's a disparity. Even though it's slight, it's still a disparity. But that B grade we got from the Lung Association is a score based on a single high reading at a confined area within the county in which fireworks were going off. So the Lung Association is saying, hey, you had these fireworks going off on that one day of the year, we're going to grade you a B. Well, it's somewhat subjective. The federal government says we're meeting that standard. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, commissioners, just want to let you know we have a very robust air monitoring program. We have a lot of veteran staff that are working with the monitors. We monitor every day, 24/7. We have people that come into the office and go out and collect samples on every holiday and every weekend. It's part of what we do. Our air quality, like you said, is the best it's been in over 40 years, and we have a lot of dedicated staff that work in several areas of the division, whether it's permitting or compliance or monitoring or special programs. We do everything that we can to hopefully continue along this way so that we'll continue to have good air quality in Hillsborough County. I want to move to the widening project, but I'm open for any questions before I change the subject. Okay.
Oh, excuse me.
Oh.
This is a. Yes, good, because, so we're just going to move right ahead and
Okay.
take all the questions at the end.
Okay, great. Thank you, Commissioner. So the second part of today's presentation is related to the I-275 widening project. Recall you asked that we provide you our review of different environmental reports, which we received from FDOT. All of the reports are related to possible lead contamination, and we committed to coming back to this board with an analysis of those reports. Just want to let you know we also have several representatives from FDOT staff here today, and they'll be prepared to speak at the conclusion of my presentation if necessary. So next slide, please. We reviewed 6 FDOT reports that were provided to us, and we also reviewed the report that was provided by Ms. Savage. Both reports were related to possible lead contamination. Just want to point out the way the samples were taken, FDOT's consultant or contractor, they took the samples from paint coatings that's on the concrete. which makes sense because they're demoing and chipping away at the concrete. Ms. Savage's report, apparently that she gathered, my understanding is that she took the sample from a barricade. So it's two different materials that the samples came from, but because they were solids, they were analyzed the same way. And I don't want to get too convoluted with the explanation, so let me tell you what I have, and then I can break it down afterwards. But because the material settles out in the air, it basically falls down and accumulates in the soil. So EPC compared the test results that were submitted to a known standard, and the standard that we compared it to is the Florida Residential Soil Cleanup Target Level. It's the 400 that you see in the third block of the first column. That's the standard that we compared everything to. So looking at these maximum concentrations that we received from the paint from FDOT, the sample showed a maximum concentration of 162 milligrams per kilogram. And then we looked at Mrs. Savage's report. It showed 18 milligrams per kilogram, a lower number. But both of those numbers are below the cleanup target level of 400, much lower, as a matter of fact. The sample that Ms. Savage presented, there was not an analysis done for hazardous material. The sample that was presented by FDOT, that analysis took place, and the report showed that there was no hazardous substance included in the sample. So Mrs. Savage's concern was that lead was in the dust sample that she collected, and that level exceeded the air sample. And it's kind of like comparing apples and oranges, because both samples are looking at solids, and she's taking the numbers and trying to apply it to what may be in the air, more of a volume type analysis. So I'm going to get to the air part in a minute, but I do want to give you this conclusion. The conclusion basically is that that based on the samples provided to EPC, the lead concentrations in both the paint coating and the dust are well below the Florida residential soil standard, that 400 that's on the chart. And because they are this low, it would not trigger an environmental investigation even for soils in a residential setting. Next slide, please. So because no one, neither Ms. Savage or FDOT staff, took an air sample, that's what our monitoring group took upon themselves to go out and establish. We had several staff people go out sometime between last Friday and over the weekend and erect a air monitor. Excuse me, the monitor is placed at the Seminole Heights Library. And you can see the picture down below. This is, just near the intersection of I-275 and Osborne Street. And so right now, DOT is not doing any demolition at that site, so we're collecting background data now. The demolition is supposed to start up, I believe, week after next. We're going to keep the monitor there the whole time collecting. When the demolition starts up, they'll probably have another week or two, from what they're telling us, to complete that demolition. And then we'll take data, we'll sample data for the whole time period. And then when we get those samples, we'll analyze it, with our lab, and then we'll come back with a full report. So what Mrs. Savage, is alluding is that, the samples that were taken, violate an air quality standard. We don't know that yet until we collect data, just to be clear. Next slide, please. At the last meeting, you also requested a cost estimate for additional monitoring at future FDOT road projects. So before I get into the number that we have, it's important to understand that in order for any air quality monitoring to be conducted, there are two things that must be available. We must have adequate space in order to place the monitor with enough buffer around it, and we must have electrical power. Absent those things, no monitoring could be conducted. The only reason I mention this is because we're talking, a corridor the interstate corridor. And it doesn't always lend itself to that. But if monitoring were to be conducted, we've come up with a number, roughly $250,000 that it would take to place 4 monitors, at different locations throughout the year. So that's our cost estimate. Next slide, please. So this leads us to the recommendation. All of this being said, we have 2 recommendations. The first is that staff report back to the commission at the conclusion of the monitoring that we have in place now with a full analysis. And then based on the results of that monitoring that we're conducting, should the data demonstrate the lead levels are below the air threshold for lead, we think it's probably prudent to just request assurance from FDOT Secretary that they utilize best management practices with any demolition or construction work on that road project. So if we get those assurances, basically it boils down to watering, keeping the dust levels down. If DOT commits to that, we think, monies like almost $250,000 could maybe be better spent, in other areas. Of course, it's your decision. But this would take place, if they do the best management practices, this would be in lieu of like a static air quality monitoring. So that concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you. And I think it'd be, I'll ask to see if anybody from FDOT wants to speak as well since they're here. But I'm seeing no unless there's questions. So Commissioner Kemp.
Thank you so much. It was very helpful because I had asked about, and I've been confused for decades about the lung association's ratings vis-a-vis our ratings and whether the lung association kind of got their ratings from us and put them out, because that's ones that I'm more familiar with than anything. I always knew that there was this difference, but I never had it clarified for me. So that was important, and I appreciate you clarifying that distinction. This sounds good, but I have also, and I saw where the monitors were, so I'm trying to think, I should have brought copies of it in. I'd asked about it the other day too. There was online when I went and looked, there were monitors, and they, as I said, they were marked in different colors though, and one said Hillsborough High School, and one said Old Seminole Heights, and they were dramatically different readings. And in fact, Hillsborough High School, the one there was twice as high as any other in all the readings I saw. But then they had one that said Old Seminole Heights, and like all the other monitors, it was half the reading. I think the level at Hillsborough High was something like 43, and the other monitors were 23 or something like that. And I had stated too, I was confused because Hillsborough High School is actually in a very small area of Old Seminole Heights. And so I couldn't understand the distinction in the readings and the implications of the Hillsborough High reading being twice as high as any other one in the area, and I didn't know.
I can speak to it. So, Commissioner, thank you for reminding me. I meant to bring that out during the course of this presentation. So the site that you saw, we actually found that site, and it does show exactly what you say. It shows high levels at Hillsborough High School. What the originator, which is also a private, nonprofit company, what they do is take a certain amount of the data that we report, EPC reports, to the federal government, and then they take their own data. And so what they use are these passive monitoring devices. And I know you're familiar with it. We've spoken, and we have a grant project with the TPO and looking to try to better understand the effectiveness of these passive monitors. But on this site, they take passive monitors, they take EPC data, they combine it, and then they come up with a number. The thing I'd like to point out about the passive monitors is that they're not that reliable. In fact, we've completed a, what do you call it? Kind of like a preliminary study in coordination with Dr. Amy Stewart out at the University of South Florida, looking at these passive monitors. I think they call them purple monitors. And those monitors, and speaking with our monitoring chief, can be off by as much as 40%, reading 40% higher than what our federal regulated monitors read. Now, when we cite a monitor, it's not just collecting, pollution. It has to be cited as collecting data such as relative humidity, time and temperature, a number of different factors that are required of us. So I guess to sum it all up, I think we can't place too much confidence in some of the passive monitors. But like you say, they put it on the web, they promote it, but unless you know some of the background, it can be confusing.
Okay. Thank you. I very much appreciate it. The recommendations with that, I'll move approval, but I'll just say of the recommendations as stated. I still would like in the future. So the EPC has the air quality monitor you showed right there by Hillsborough, the Seminole Heights Library.
Seminole Heights Library.
And that's recording all the NOx and CO2. And,
just lead.
And so we can.
It's just lead only.
It's what?
Lead. It's only lead.
It's only lead.
Right.
Oh, I see.
Right.
It's not, okay. So we still, the monitor that collects the CO2, the NOx, which are really particulate matter, which are really significant to me in the long run, that the monitor for that, the one monitor that you have is by the
near road
interchange there, downtown, south of that.
South of downtown.
And, I'd be curious in the future, I guess, to be looking at what kind of levels that's taking in.
We can present that information
yeah,
in the future without a doubt.
I would like to see that, and that might also, for me, make me want to have some other monitors as well. As I have stated before, I've been very concerned about, because of some of the new watershed studies that have come out about the extreme effects of air pollution on those who live within an area of interstates,
right.
Up to a mile. I had seen where they get exposed to just enough of the or some of the studies have shown the NOx, the particulate matter that is associated with high amounts of childhood asthma, cardiovascular disease, cancer, or maybe even dementia. And so I'm very concerned about, in the future, looking at those and our what we're finding around our expressways and interstates, because that's where it's highly associated, not even just with a road that is, when they have that traffic coming at that volume, at that amount, and with all this, even when we go electric, dust brake, dust, and the tires is a significant polluter. So I want to think about, I'm just letting everyone know, I want to look at that in the future, but at this time, I would move the recommendations.
Second.
Thank you. And before we vote on the motion, I just want to make a few remarks. Is there anybody else? Nope. I also very much appreciate going kind of above and beyond the assignment all the way to explaining those American Lung Association ratings and air quality in general as we look at this, because that it just is pertinent information to understand that if the American Lung Association is giving us an F on ozone, that's because of 4 days that our ozone went over the federal regulations. So, I mean, it's there's room for improvement, certainly, but it's just good to know that that's what an F means. And when they give us a B for dust, that's because of there was one day with fireworks going off that is the cause of that. So again, it's just it's a huge asset that we have your expertise, your agency, this EPC, to explain what that means. I will note that there are concerns that our federal standards on several of these pollutants could be lowered, and they have been. And they have been, as you showed in your slide, that ozone standard, the federal standard, has been lowered considerably over your tenure. And we've managed to continue meeting it as it's been lowered. We are, of course, as everybody knows, discovering new emerging contaminants of concern, even in water with PFOS and PFAS and things. So, we're not done measuring and understanding the impacts of various pollutants and figuring out what we can do to improve things. But I think I really want to just point out that I appreciate as we consider your recommendations, that I appreciate when we've had these citizen concerns and similar to Gopher, when we have community concerns coming up about the interstate and the construction, and citizens bring very compelling, serious concerns to us, that the EPC pretty much leaped into action and installed a lead monitor in the vicinity of that construction work at the Seminole Heights Library over the weekend, so that we could get ahead of establishing a baseline, right, and
That's
be
correct.
taking readings while there's no construction going on at that place. So then we will understand if what the impacts of any construction is.
Exactly.
on that baseline reading. And beyond the staff recommendation, I think the staff recommendation is very good. I mean, considering it's great that we are able to have this independent monitoring. We have FDOT answering the citizens, but there's some distrust there. When we can have EPC come out and give a separate monitoring, that gives assurance to everybody that we've double checked. We've got a second opinion. And so we can have that level of comfort. And but beyond this, and so certainly we can see if EPC's air quality data analysis demonstrates that lead is staying below the threshold at which we have any purview of doing anything about it, then we'll require, as you're saying, the best practices and continue monitoring and continue listening to the citizens and continue, being good stewards of the air quality. But having your monitor, your air quality monitor right there in the vicinity allows us, even beyond this, to, the recommendation says the staff will report back at the whole end of it, but you'll be monitoring all along the way. And if there's a cause for concern, while the EPC doesn't have legal authority over the state DOT, what we do have is information from a credible source to send to the state, to publicize, to alert the citizens. And I'm sure if that, if in that event, then FDOT would take those results seriously, and there would be opportunity to take action about it. So I think these this is, again, a luxury of having EPC is that we've been able to even do this in our county to answer and monitor the situation for the citizens' concerns. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, Commissioner, that wraps it up for me.
Mr. Marotti, anything on the what I've just said about the legal authority?
You capture the preemption accurately. Thank you.
I'm always careful about stepping over that line. Okay, so we've got Commissioner Myers. You're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just like to say thank you to Ms. Savage for bringing this to our attention, and the EPC for the educational experience overview of how both were in compliance of her sample, looking at EPE sample, and then your presentation to us this morning. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Yes, thank you very much for all your work in this presentation on your way to what we all hope is a happy retirement. So with that, we'll take a roll call vote on the motion.
Smith?
Yes.
Cohen? Hagan?
Yes.
Kemp?
Yes.
Myers?
Yes.
Overman? White?
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0.
Thank you. All right, and that'll take us to the annual report. Ms. Lawrenson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Commissioners. I think I'll just do it from here. I was going to do it from the podium, but I see I have a clear line of sight with all of you, so I'll just take it right from here. Before I do begin the annual report, I did want to say, Commissioner Kemp, that we do have a wordle for Reggie, and we'll give it to him at his retirement, but it had all the words that everyone was saying today, and I do want to give him credit. He did this annual report for many years, even for Dr. Garrity, and he has handed it over to Jeff Sims. And I want to thank Jeff Sims and Elena Glusica for helping put this report together. So.
And excuse me, but as I see the FDOT leaving the room now that their item is done, I want to thank you for bringing in so many of your staff that would be available for comments if necessary. So I appreciate your coming down today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay. I just wanted to just give credit where credit was due. A lot of the Sterling metrics and the Sterling process management that we went through and this report were done by Reggie for decades. And so he spins a lot of plates besides doing air. So I just wanted to thank him. But this year and the year before, it's been handed off to Jeff Sims, who kind of has taken over a lot of Reggie's duties. And I just wanted to thank Elena Glusica, and everybody who put in the key performance measures and metrics that are tracked with all the divisions. So again, Commissioners, if we could bring up my slides, I'll run through this very quickly. It's a pleasure to come before you once again to report on our agency's progress, programs, and initiatives for fiscal year 2022. This year, our theme is environmental protection through community connection, which recognizes the importance of EPC's engagements with our local community. Next slide. At EPC, our mission, vision, and values provide the framework to ensure we remain focused on our goals. We utilize them throughout our daily interactions with the community, and we evaluate them annually as a part of our strategic planning process. Next slide. Our agency has embraced the rigorous Sterling management process to steer us in the most efficient and effective way. We reevaluated and fine-tuned nearly every aspect of our processes, ultimately achieving the Florida Governor Sterling Award. We continue to use this performance-based model for continuous improvements driven by specific goals and objectives. We also emphasize transparency and use extensive metrics, process mapping, and key performance measures to gauge our performance and service delivery to our customers. The EPC is a premier organization driven by documented facts and metrics, which you will see reflected throughout my report. Next slide, please. And you'll see on that slide that was Dr. Garrity. We received that award together. The agency's core functions listed here come directly from our Enabling Act. Each of these core functions is integral to our mission for the protection of our environment and for maintaining the quality of life for the citizens of Hillsborough County. Additionally, we have delegated authority across several environmental programs to further monitor and protect our local community. Next slide, please. Wetlands are the kidneys of our environment, helping to filter and purify our water and providing natural storage reservoirs in the landscape. Our Wetlands Division continues to safeguard these resources by working with all stakeholder groups of Hillsborough County. The basis of review was revised for the second year in a row. Revisions included incentives to create living shorelines where appropriate, new exemptions, and the streamlining of the permitting process. Next slide. Wetlands processes over 2,000 permits annually. The table to the left shows the numbers of reviews completed and permits issued this year. The graph to the right shows that new applications received for wetlands, for activities in wetlands, have almost doubled in the last decade. Next slide, please. Ensuring wetlands within Hillsborough County will be around for years to come is vital to our mission. The graph to your left shows, through pre-application meetings and alternative site plan development, that proposed impacts were reduced by 2/3 to an approved total of 26 acres. The figure on the right shows the impact acreage for those approved projects. As you can see, almost half of the total approved projects were less than a 1/4 acre of impact size. Next slide, please. The graph before you demonstrates the continued commitment to no net loss of wetland functions within Hillsborough County. As a reminder, there is a requirement when wetlands are approved for impacts that mitigation be provided to offset the loss, and EPC manages this locally. This shows the last 5 years comparing the completed acres of impacts in blue to the mitigation completed in orange. Next slide, please. Establishing conservation easements plays a vital role in protecting properties for future generations, but is not required for every wetland mitigation area. This figure illustrates the required mitigation conservation easements, as well as the voluntary conservation easements, which are given to EPC from property owners for non-mitigation purposes. Through education and working with the development community, since 2014, EPC has received 1,544 acres of such easements. Next slide. Our Air Division is responsible for guarding and enhancing the quality of air we breathe. While we monitor the local air quality levels, the Air Division also inspects air pollution sources, investigates complaints, and maintains limitations on certain noises. Next slide, please. Our air monitoring network is one of the most robust systems in the nation, with an extensive volume of data acquired over several decades. Data collected by our staff not only determines our compliance with the federal air quality standards, but it is also used to set standards for future rulemaking. Our monitoring staff ensure that we maintain around-the-clock monitoring of the primary air pollutants through the maintenance of our air monitoring network. We are currently in compliance for all federal air quality standards, despite EPA tightening those standards over the years. Next slide, please. EPA's Air Quality Index ranks air quality levels from good to hazardous. Overall, our local air quality is good, and we experience only a few days each year where the air quality is unhealthy for sensitive groups. Since TECO and Mosaic upgraded their pollution control systems for sulfur dioxide, there has been a general decline in the number of unhealthy air days. In recent years, ozone and fine particulate are the pollutants that typically drive the AQI numbers. Next slide. EPC is proud to have been selected as one of only 2 photochemical assessment monitoring stations located in Florida. EPC initiated operation of this site this summer as a part of the national EPA network. The main objective of the PAMS site is to collect data regarding ozone precursors for model development and trend analysis. EPC also launched the third iteration of the radon and dust study, performed in collaboration with the Florida Department of Health, Hillsborough County Public Schools, and Mosaic Fertilizer. This year-long study of the potential impacts from Mosaic's phosphogypsum stack in Riverview was requested by the commissioners and is funded through the Pollution Recovery Fund. Next slide, please. AIR's Citizen Response section investigates air pollution complaints, issues burn authorizations to developers, and operates an asbestos compliance program on behalf of EPA and the state. The section also houses one of the few local noise pollution control programs in the state. The noise measurement protocol is very defined and requires periodic training from noise experts, as occurred in February of this year. Recently, EPC's Air Division and legal staff have initiated a proposed revision to the current EPC noise rule. Next slide. The air permitting and compliance sections regulate various sources of industrial air pollution. They ensure these facilities follow local, state, and federal rules. Construction permits are a high priority because they correlate to growth and can lead to new job opportunities. Our permitted facilities consist of over 200 industrial sources. Next slide, please. The EPC's Waste Division is responsible for ensuring the proper management and control of solid and hazardous waste through its state contracted and state delegated activities, as well as its independent permitting, compliance, and waste generator education programs. Next slide, please. Under contract with the FDEP, the EPC has managed the petroleum cleanup program in Hillsborough County since 1989. The EPC's petroleum cleanup program works with and manages the activities of state and local contractors who oversee the cleanup of properties where petroleum discharges have occurred. Next slide, please. Like the petroleum cleanup program, the EPC has managed the storage tank compliance program under the contract with the FDEP since 1989. Our routine tanks compliance activities ensure proper storage tank operation and maintenance, thereby protecting our groundwater resources. Next slide. In many instances, the brownfields and old landfill redevelopment programs work together to promote, problem solve, and incentivize impacted and contaminated site redevelopment. The EPC continues to manage the state delegated brownfield redevelopment program in Hillsborough County and has done so for the past 18 years. Over this past year, brownfield site redevelopment has resulted in a $74 million increase in property values. The EPC has promoted, assisted in, and guided the redevelopment of historic solid waste disposal areas, old landfills, since 1978. Next slide, please. By state mandate, all counties are required to establish a small quantity generator notification and verification program. And EPC has maintained its program since 1991. The SQG program is self-funded by user fees, and to date, over 16,000 businesses are registered as potential generators of hazardous waste. Our program is based upon education and compliance assistance to business owners and operators. And since 2016, compliance rates have significantly increased. Next slide. Our water division protects surface and groundwater quality through the implementation of monitoring, permitting, compliance, and enforcement programs. These pictures show EPC water staff engaged with the public regarding the services provided by the water division. Next slide. Each year, the Bay's report card is updated to show the water quality trends for the 4 Bay segments. Across the top are the 4 segments. The water quality indicated in orange is poor and green is good. The Bay has dramatically improved since EPC began monitoring water quality over 5 decades ago. Tampa Bay had some serious challenges to contend with in 2021, including Piney Point and Red Tide. The yellow designation of Lower Tampa Bay for 21 reflects these challenges. In an effort to improve tidal flows, the EPC Commission proactively advocated for FDOT to consider bridge design enhancements to help mitigate tidal impasses. Next slide. The Pollution Recovery Fund, housed in the Water Division, provides grant money for projects to mitigate the effects of pollution. It is funded solely by penalties obtained through enforcement. Since 1987, the PRF has provided over $8 million in grant funds for over 170 environmental projects. These funds are often leveraged with other funding sources to help pay for much larger projects. This slide shows that 3 of the 7 active projects are countywide. Next slide. The Water Compliance section conducts routine inspections for domestic and industrial wastewater facilities. For this past fiscal year, staff conducted 400 inspections. These include small and advanced sewage treatment plants and industrial facilities such as power plants, concrete batch plants, and bulk and raw material storage. Next slide, please. EPC water staff respond to a variety of citizen concerns. These include ongoing sewage spills, failing pump stations, septic discharges to waterways, construction site runoff, turbidity issues, and general water quality concerns. We responded to over 350 citizen complaints in this fiscal year for the Water Division. Next slide. The Administrative Division and Legal Department support our 4 operational divisions. Our admin and legal teams maintain budgets, ensure compliance with regulations, and provide state-of-the-art technological enhancements. They apply a combination of job expertise and timely quality work. They apply a combination of job expertise and timely quality work which benefits staff, the public, and ultimately the environment. Next slide. Here are the results of last year's employee survey that we shared with staff this fiscal year. The results demonstrated the highest overall employee satisfaction since the surveys began. Next slide, please. In 2022, we hired an outside consultant to survey our customers in order to gauge their satisfaction with our operational division services, our website, and their overall satisfaction with EPC. 96% of all responses received were rated as either good, which is a 3, or excellent, which is a 4. Overall satisfaction has steadily increased over the last 10 years. Next slide, please. We recognize the value and benefit diversity provides to our agency, and this remains a primary focal point for our hiring practices. We seek to capitalize on building a diverse workforce, which increases our opportunities for high performance, as well as increased staff and community engagement. As you can see on the charts, more than half of our staff consists of females, and about 1/3 of staff are minorities. Under my tenure, we have added 5 minority division directors and increased minority division at the management levels. Next slide, please. Our goal is to be responsible with the fiscal resources we are given. Once again, we maintain fiscal responsibility to stay within our budget and are on track to return money to the general fund. We continue to bring in nearly $1 for every dollar we receive from the county. Next slide, please. This past year, all of our operational divisions have been subject to some form of audit by the outside. In 2020, EPC had 47 audits evaluating our performance. We use these audit results to improve our programs. Next slide, please. As you can see from the summary of the agency's complaint activity, we not only receive many environmental complaints, but we have been prompt in our response. Of the nearly 1,500 complaints received, we've responded to our constituents within 3 days, 99% of the time, and have closed out nearly all complaints within the 90-day time frame. While noise is the leading complaint type, EPC investigates a wide variety of environmental concerns. Next slide, please. I'm pleased to report for 2022 year-to-date that we are meeting most of our self-imposed metrics established for our core functions. But increased workload and staff turnover continue to challenge our performance towards meeting these goals. It should be noted that we established these internal goals during the rigorous Sterling management process, wherein the agency set a high bar and elevated efficiency standards. For 2022, we tightened our compliance goal during the end of the year strategic planning, wherein all goals are reviewed annually. Next slide, please. EPC staff continues to promote sustainability with our partner agency, stakeholders, and the community, from partnering with Clean Cities Coalition to working with the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Resiliency Coalition. In addition, this year, EPC embarked on a community-scale monitoring project with the Transportation Planning Organization, USF, and the local community. This project involves the installation of air sensors into communities most impacted by transportation-related air pollution to study the air quality and provide community access to the air quality data. Next slide, please. EPC continues to connect solar into our local communities by helping homes and small businesses go solar. In May, Commissioner Kemp, EPC, Solar United Neighbors, and our special partners launched the 2020 Hillsborough County Solar Co-op. And the response was strong, with over 180 members joining the co-op, resulting in 38 contracts signed so far. Installations have already begun, and it looks to be a shining year with $1.2 million invested into the local economy and an average of 228 metric tons per year of CO2 emission offsets. The future of solar is even brighter with the recent legislation creating a federal rebate of 30% and establishing eligibility for nonprofits and government organizations. Next slide, please. The environmental and business feedback groups continue to provide us with useful advice, and we continue to listen to the ideas and concerns of both citizenry and the regulated community. We met with both feedback groups this year. Next slide, please. Brenda Mallory, chair of the White House Council on Environmental Quality, Congresswoman Kathy Castor, and Commissioner Gwen Myers took a tour of an EPC air quality monitoring station of interest and several brownfield redevelopment sites in Tampa in May of this year. The site visits were followed by a roundtable discussion with community advocates and local government entities to discuss local issues relating to the protection of the environment and public health concerns in Hillsborough County. Next slide, please. Community engagement remains a strategic priority for EPC. EPC connects with local students, and we participated at multiple events to promote EPC and its mission. I'm also proud to announce that staff hosted a special EPC Engineering and Science Expo for Terrace Community Middle School students in our courtyard in April of this past year. Next slide, please. Interactions with citizens is integral for EPC to allow for a more informed public, while encouraging the importance of a healthy environment. As you can see, we engage in a variety of civic activities and are often supported in person by you, such as Commissioner Overman at the Strawberry Parade Luncheon, Commissioner Cohen at the Great Port Authority Cleanup, and Commissioner Smith at the Hillsborough 100 Kickoff event. It's my personal commitment to engage with the community, and I also want to thank EPC staff for their volunteer participation and community support throughout the year. Next slide. We participated in numerous environmental workshops and forums at the national, state, and local levels, such as Commissioner Myers' town hall meetings. Staff resolution efforts with local permitted sources resulted in some significant environmental settlements. EPC also identifies submittals that could be potentially adverse to the environment as projects of heightened public concern, which enhances notification to the public for projects that may impact the local community. In a recent proposal, through the awareness created by EPC's notice, the project ended in favor of the desires of the community. Next slide. After a 2-year hiatus, EPC was pleased to host our 19th Clean Air Fair in downtown Tampa. This year's theme for our signature event was Celebrate Clean Air Fair. Over 50 exhibitors participated with environmental displays that reached more than 1,000 visitors. The event, including live music, prize drawings, and complimentary food, drinks, and tree saplings were provided for attendees. The fair was also attended by several local and national officials who addressed the crowd and stressed the importance of clean air for the vitality and good health of our communities. Next slide. In association with our Clean Air Month activities, we also celebrated with our 21st annual Student Environmental Photography Contest. In accordance with the Celebrate Clean Air theme, students were encouraged to recognize that our Earth is a giving planet and provides our every need, including air, water, food, and natural resources. Next slide. Our philanthropic committee focuses on organizing agency efforts to have a benevolent impact in the community. Annually, the committee supports a number of local charity organizations such as Feeding Tampa Bay and Metropolitan Ministries. In addition to gifts, cash donations to these various charities were nearly $2,000 this year. EPC staff believes that it's imperative to help those in our community who are suffering and in need. Next slide, please. EPC established for the Love of Bustani fundraiser event in honor of a retired waste director, Hushang Bustani. More than $1,000 in staff donations were collected to benefit the animal shelter, and the event will be held annually as a Valentine's Day event. Next slide, please. In 2022, we celebrated the retirement of 5 staff with 20 years or more of service, including Air Division Director Reggie Sanford, who retires at the end of this month. We thank them for their lifetime of dedication and service to the citizens of Hillsborough County. Next slide. We look forward to 2023 with high expectations of ourselves, and we will strategically plan to address our known challenges. We will remain adaptable, looking always to efficiently maximize resources and maintain flexibility. However, we have recognized a significant institutional loss of knowledge recently, including the nearly 150 years of experience from retirements this year alone. In addition, we've experienced increased difficulty in hiring and retaining emerging leaders due to the competitive salary inequities from both the public and private sectors. These future leaders were part of our succession planning strategy, so sufficient resources are necessary to reestablish EPC as a desired long-term career destination. Increased workloads also continue to strain existing resources, so we are already assessing our fiscal year 23 needs. We also recognize the importance of keeping pace with the constantly evolving changes in information technology so that our communications and information storage are secure. Next slide. While EPC prides ourselves on operating lean, we have also struggled at times to maintain pace with rampant development in the county and the increased workload it generates. We have implemented efficiencies, including a workflow analysis of our busiest division through an outside consultant, which has improved performance. However, as shown previously, applications in our wetland divisions have doubled in the last 10 years, and our performance metrics show that we are unable to meet our processing timeline goal with existing resources. In 2007, the county population has increased by 26% to approximately, which equates to 1.5 million people. Yet we have continued to provide service with 21% less staff. In addition, our MIS department is working on implementing many improvements to electronic processing and database management. In the coming year, we intend to propose additional staffing and funding for consideration by this board in order to continue to provide the high standard of service that is part of the values of this agency. Next slide. Next slide. Maybe not. None of EPC's success could happen without the dedication of our staff, working together for the good of our environment and our community. I wish to personally thank staff for all of their efforts in making 2022 a very successful year. Next slide. And commissioners, we appreciate all that you do to champion the environment, our community, and our agency. It's your backing, along with the support of the County Administrator Bonnie Weiss and her staff, that is vital to EPC's ability to operate as a first-rate local environmental program. We cannot do what we do without you, and we thank you. This concludes my annual report, and I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. It's always great to have this like once a year opportunity to review everything, the wide range of services that EPC provides this county. And I hear the message that you're ending on, and we understand that the county's going through the similar issues with hiring.
Correct.
And keeping up with wages and budgets throughout this county. You can see it happening in the city. You can see it happening across the bay and other counties. It's not unique to EPC, but it is something that we will have to address here. A couple of quick points I want to make. There was, of course, an awful lot to be proud of in this past year and the report and the look forward. But you know, as we're considering the importance of keeping up the number of employees, I'm struck not only by the number of complaints that you or citizen concerns or complaints that you have to address, hundreds of them, but this is another area where my past experience as a squeaky wheel citizen myself can be a testament to the culture of EPC of responding quickly and professionally and completely to every citizen concern. And as I was a leader in the local Sierra Club, I would get a lot of phone calls. What? Something's going on. It looks like pollution. Something's going on. It looks bad for the environment. And I would just keep handy. Here, call EPC. Some things is SwiftMud, some things is FWC, but a lot of things are EPC. And I would hear back just always, without exception, that EPC addresses our community and responds to our constituents in a just a remarkable way with high standards. And one of the things that I always explain to people too, or brag about, is that as a regulatory agency, which can kind of encounter friction at times with people who want to do something, build something, a new commercial or residential endeavor, and they've got to go to EPC for the permits, and they find out, no, you've got a wetland. EPC doesn't just say no and send them packing. EPC, the reason you've got 76 applications and 26 actual mitigation is not that those 50% or 2/3 went away and didn't build their thing. It's because so many times EPC was able to work with them, work in the planning stages and help figure out, if you move the driveway over here, you'll be able to still access your site in many cases. And whether or not that can be accomplished in all cases, certainly the wetland protections are the priority, but that service of helping people figure out how they can do what they want to do and still protect the environment is an ethic and a mission that we're able to do here because we've got this local control, but it does take professionals, it does take experts, it takes employees. And, the last thing I'll say is, as we are in this county and on my other boards at Tampa Bay Water and other places, understanding the importance of reflecting the diversity of our community in our employees, in our staffing, all the way from the grassroots to the management level. I'm very pleased to see that EPC's annual report has a slide measuring that metric, stating that as a goal. And so, that as you hopefully are able to fill some of the hiring, staffing needs moving forward, I know that will continue to be a goal, and especially proud to see that diversity and that our community's diversity is reflected throughout the ranks all the way up to the division directors that report directly to you. And that's important, and it's something we can be proud of, and it's something I know we'll be continuing to do in your continuing hiring. So we have no other comments on that, but is there anything else you would like to add to close out?
No, Commissioner, I appreciate your remarks. We do that annually so members of the public can understand, what the agency does and what we've been doing this year. So it's really, I appreciate you, it's a lengthy presentation, but I really appreciate all of your attention and your comments and your support as well. And it's not only employees, it's your support and Administrator Wise's support and her staff that allow us to do the job that we do, because without resources, we would not be a premier organization. So thank you.
Absolutely. That's another thing, that you have support throughout the administration, throughout our various departments, and we really appreciate the benefit of being able to work together with solid waste, with utilities, with all the with ELAP, and all the different agencies that you work together hand in glove with.
Yes.
So from here, the initiation of the Executive Director's performance review, that will be Ms. DeLue, right?
Yes. Good morning, Commissioners. Elaine DeLue, EPC staff. So the Executive Director's employment agreement requires the Commission conduct an evaluation every October or soon after. In preparation for that, I'll briefly review the process. First, you receive agency goals and receive quarterly updates in the agenda packets throughout the year. Ms. Lorton provides her annual report, which you just heard. The administrative staff provides blank evaluation forms and ranking criteria to you. Ms. Lorton provides her self-evaluation, which contains accomplishments and milestones for the past fiscal year. You can meet with her individually if you'd like. After considering the annual report and reviewing the self-evaluation, please fill out the evaluation forms and return them in hard copy or electronically to EPC Chair Commissioner Smith's office by October 7th. The Chair will send them back to EPC administration, and at the next meeting in October, we'll compile the scores and provide you with an open discussion at that time. So there's no action necessary to take today. We just wanted to inform you of the process and see if you had any questions.
Thank you. We've all been through this process before, and we know it will move along seamlessly as it has in past years. And David Young in my office does a lot of the coordinating of that with the other offices, and we'll continue this. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
And do you have any other executive director report?
I just have about 5 minutes, just some quick slides, but I do want to thank this board for moving my review so that commissioners that know me and have worked with me can review me. It was very awkward being reviewed in December with new individuals coming on that had not really known my performance during the year. So thank you for moving that to October. I appreciate it. So if you could pull up my slides. Before I begin my remarks, I did want to Just personally thank this board, their staff, Hillsborough County Administration and their staff, and EPC staff for your outpouring of love and condolences for the passing of my late husband. Your love, support, and friendship have been a comfort to myself and my family, and we're eternally grateful. So with that, could you pull up my slides? Thank you very, very much. So with that, we'll go through these slides very quickly and we'll conclude our meeting. Next slide. It is my personal commitment to meet with environmental state and federal officials when the opportunity presents itself to further foster good working relationships and to share the important work that EPC staff is doing locally. Last month, I was fortunate enough to meet with Secretary Sean Hamilton of the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, and I do want to give a shout out to this gentleman. He met with Ed Sherwood. He took all of the local people and met with us for over an hour individually and wanted to know what we were thinking instead of meeting in a work group. And he gave me his individual attention and his cell phone number, and I was very impressed with this gentleman. Next slide. EPC attorney Andy Zadro, who is on speed dial with Commissioner Smith, moderated a panel at the Hillsborough County Bar Association's 4th Annual Environmental and Land Use Law Conference this May. Additionally, Attorney Beth Lee provided an agency update to conference attendees. Next slide. The North American Hazardous Materials Management Association's NAMA, which is a mouthful, the Florida chapter hosted the 37th Annual National Annual Conference in Fort Myers in July. NAMA is a professional association dedicated to promoting pollution prevention and the safe and effective handling of hazardous waste, which is great for the Pollution Week we're celebrating as well. EPC's Small Quantity Generator, SQG staff, took an active role in planning the 2022 conference and will help to host a Florida chapter workshop locally in 2024. Next slide. The Florida Local Environmental Resource Agency's FLARA conference was recently held in Panama City. EPC's Wetlands Senior Environmental Manager and FLARA Natural Resource Committee Chair Kim Tapley was voted Vice President of FLARA. Kim also participated in a panel on natural resource resiliency. She discussed native-based plant solutions for shoreline protection and the reduced flood insurance rates that Hillsborough County residents enjoy as a direct benefit of wetland and floodplain protections. I wish to give a special shout out to EPC alumnus Tom Ash, who was also awarded the Rick Wilkins Lifetime Achievement Award at that conference. Next slide. Kelly Holland, also with our Wetlands Division, and Kim Tapley made a joint presentation highlighting the importance of EPC's role in the community to the Tampa Audubon Society following its 50th anniversary celebration this month. Next slide. EPC's senior management and staff toured the new state-of-the-art photochemical assessment monitoring station, PAMS, located at our Sydney site last week. As I discussed in the annual report, we operate one of only 2 PAM sites in the state of Florida. We will be holding a special dedication ceremony early next year to rename the Sydney station in honor of the late Air Division Director, Ivan Kuranchenko. Commissioners, I would like to extend an invitation to you and your aides to join us for that special ceremony and a tour of the site following the dedication. Next slide. And that concludes our meeting, Commissioners. Thank you for sticking with me, and it was a great meeting. I think a lot of good information and a lot of information for the public. So our next meeting will be October 20th.
Thank you, and you know our hearts are with you as you go through this time.
Thank you.
And with that, I think we have no further business. Our meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Commissioners.